welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Yes, I did get a haircut. Thank you for noticing. I have this little bang thing now, which is fun. Today I thought I would share with you some of my 5 favorite practice tips to make your practicing more focused and efficient. They'll be fairly general and hopefully will apply to all instruments, but I'm sorry, some things I'll say will mostly apply to wind players. So, tip number 1, use a stopwatch or timer. I learned the benefits of this from when I had an injury almost 3 years ago on my wrist. I had to stop playing for a while, and then when I got back into playing, I couldn't just play for 2 hours again. I had to start with playing for 5 minutes at a time, then 10 minutes, etc. So I would use a timer. And then even when I got back to playing normally, it stuck with me. I like the fact that you don't have to check on the time and kind of wonder how long it's been that you've been working on something. You have a timer that's objectively keeping time for you, so you can just focus on playing, and you know that at some point you'll hear the alarm go off and you'll stop, and I would suggest taking a break. When the alarm goes off for me, or when I stop based on what the stopwatch says, I put my flute down. And usually I stretch. Now I'm doing that a bit less, but I definitely put my flute down to give my hands a break. So you can choose how much time you want to play before you take a break. I would suggest not going past 40 minutes before putting your instrument down or resting your voice. I do use a stopwatch instead of a timer just because the alarm can get annoying. I like to be able to just kind of finish my phrase or thought before stopping, so I just keep an eye on the stopwatch every so often, and I usually stop playing after it's been either 25 to 30 minutes of time. Tip number 2, use a metronome. Yes, we don't like metronomes as musicians because the sound is annoying, but they're really useful. And I don't think we should only use a metronome when we're working on something technical. I use a metronome when I warm up and I do tone exercises or long tones because then I can keep track of my air capacity. So I might start an exercise at a faster tempo, and every practice session I'll bring the metronome slower and see if I can still make the same amount of bars with the same amount of breaths. So I would suggest always starting slower or faster than your final tempo, so that you can start by being able to play what's on the page properly without too many mistakes or anything, and then increase the difficulty and the challenge as you feel comfortable with the music. So for a fast tempo, I would start slower, and what I feel like some people don't actually do much is when something's in a really slow tempo, just start faster and slow down, because then you'll have more time to build your air capacity if you need it. Sorry, string players, this probably doesn't apply to you. But what I like is that the metronome is objective. So you can't get away with things, and it keeps track for you. And it can be fun. Someone once suggested that I make the click of the metronome an offbeat and try playing like that. It's actually really challenging. I haven't done that in a while, I should probably try again. But that's something fun that you can do to like get your brain to do different things. And when you come back to just doing something normally, it'll feel much easier. Tip number 3, reframe your self-talk. Now, I spoke a lot about this in my previous video, all about self-help, but I want to say that nothing is too hard to play. What the issue is that some pieces, some things take longer to learn than others. But I would suggest thinking to yourself that nothing is too hard. Some things will just take more time. So I also prefer the word challenging to hard because a challenge is just more positive than when saying something is too difficult. So, you know, you're recognizing that yes, there is a difficulty to what's in front of you, but a challenge is just a bit more fun to take on and to say, okay, well, I can't play this thing at this tempo right now, But if I play it slower and up the tempo, that's a challenge. That's something I can do, and that's a challenge I'm willing to take on. I try to refrain from beating myself up. I would suggest thinking of yourself as your friend, first and foremost, but also as a mirror. So to ask yourself helpful questions instead of just saying, oh my god, wow, that sucked. That's not useful. So you could use phrases like, I'm sure I can make that passage a bit cleaner. Or, that wasn't my best playing. What can I focus on now to achieve my goals before I start playing? So to reflect on what you want to focus on before playing, that's helpful for me. And for example, oh, it sounds like I need more air. Let me mark that into my score. So avoid thinking of things in terms of good and bad when you're practicing. Like that was, oh, that sounded good. Oh, that sounded bad. Those words are useless. Trust me. It's much better for you. It's going to be much more helpful for you to actually use some more nuanced words and to be more specific about what you want to improve. So if you consider yourself to be your friend and to be your own teacher and your own mirror, you're going to reduce your anxiety and tension, and naturally you will play better. I promise. Tip number 4, record yourself. So either an audio or video recording will be helpful. I'll admit that I have not done this in quite a while, but especially leading up to recitals, I like to do this a lot. Every time I listen back to a recording, like a practice recording, something substantial improves the next time I play. Like, it's pretty remarkable. Like, there's always something that you won't catch while you're playing. We're all really good at listening to ourselves as we play, but it's impossible to catch every single detail. But the camera or the recording equipment will. So you can record yourself in chunks, so just like a few lines at a time or a whole movement. And you can also record yourself playing an entire piece once you feel comfortable with it, to kind of just get a scope of your general level for the piece. And I promise it'll be really helpful. I use my phone. I don't use anything fancy. I just use the video camera on my phone to record myself, and it's helpful. On my Instagram page, you'll see I make practice videos of just 1 minute every time I practice, and I've always found something helpful to work on from them. Tip number 5, write on your score. So I would suggest writing something like accompaniment cues. What's happening in a piano part or in the second violin part or whatever it is. If you're playing with someone else, at some point in your music, you should have something written down indicating what someone else is playing. I think that's invaluable. I also like writing holistic things. So if I have a passage with a bunch of notes, me personally, I really need to decipher in general what's happening. So for example, it might just be like an A flat major arpeggio, but like not in a coherent order or with accidentals. But if I write to myself in big letters, A flat major, my brain is much better at responding to that rather than staring at every single note as I play them. You can also write down helpful cue words. You can write things like release if you know that you get really tense at a certain point. You could write the word breathe or warm, or you could write a color that you want to convey. For wind players, I would suggest writing down breath marks. Not necessarily every single one that you're going to take, but especially since you'll be working on things, for example, slower, a fast piece, you'll be starting slower and up the tempo. Your breath, the places where you'll breathe might change as you practice. So I think it's important to keep track of those changes and to write in the breath marks that are at least the ones that are really important. I think actually this all will help also with memorization. that's a whole other topic, but I think the more you write on your score, the less you have to remember as you're playing. And then I personally think it'll be helpful if you do need to memorize things later. If you've made it to this point in the video, you get some bonus tips. Bonus tip number 1, listen to recordings. So I would suggest, if you can, listening to the piece that you're going to practice, but listening to more than one version of it. So you get various ideas of how many different people play the same music. I think that's always helpful. Bonus tip number 2, play the accompaniment part. So I don't think it's enough, I was told by my teacher, I did not come up with this, to actually open up, for example, a piano score and to play what you can in it so that you get a more physical and oral idea of what's happening apart from your specific part. And bonus tip number 3, use a journal, either to keep track of what you're practicing or to reflect after each practice session. I'm not a huge fan of the reflection use of a journal. I don't like physically writing out sentences, I'm too impatient. So I keep a journal, it's been for years now, just to write out what I'm going to practice in advance. And it also helps me keep track of my metronome tempos when I'm doing technical exercises. I think that's all for today. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope some of it, if not all of it, was useful to you and helpful. I will do, as I said, a more specific practice video, or maybe a few in the future for specific situations or passages. It might be more flute related, but we'll see. And don't forget to like and share this video. You can head over to Instagram. I will be asking my followers which video topic they want to see next week. So if you want to add your input, you can follow me at the Flutey Feminist on Instagram and have your say as to what video you will see pop up in your feed next Thursday. Leave a comment below if you found any of this useful, or if you have a tip that I did not mention in this video. And in the future, if you use these tips, you can come on back to this video and leave a comment. Let me know if it was helpful, or if you were able to modify it to help you specifically. Please subscribe to this channel and make sure to follow me on all the social media. The links will always be in the description box. Thanks so much, and have a Flutey Feminist day.